Okay, so welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us today, talking through cybersecurity basics for small and medium-sized businesses. This is kind of a little bit later than we hoped for October, but part of the Awareness Month activities that we've been doing for the National Cyber Board. I have the pleasure today being joined by Dr. Marisa Stones, who works with us on the Government National Cyber Board. And for me, as somebody I've known since I've been on the island 16 years, and there's a large reason that I'm actually involved in that. The passion of her and her team to do the right thing for Bermuda around awareness is kind of contagious. So just before we dive into the topic, and we are going to keep this fairly high level today. It's not going to be technical and talk about settings, etc. We created a National Cyber Board. It was a while ago, I think, Marisa, maybe as early as 16 under Minister Gibbons at the time. And initially, one of our remits was to come up with a national cybersecurity strategy for the island. We appreciated that it was a risk that we were just seeing increase globally everywhere. And so we launched that strategy in 2018, and it had 4 key pillars to it, quite broad ones, about protecting Bermuda's cyberspace, developing appropriate legislation, regulation, policies, etc. Promoting cyber awareness and capacity building, which we think is hugely important. And then just thinking about our local and international collaboration, because we were a little siloed. And since the strategy has been in place, we have looked to hold events like this. It's something we want to do broadly across Bermuda. It's not just your group, it's all groups. The concept of a high tide raising all ships is certainly something that we embrace. For instance, Marisa's team drove, and some of our board were involved with Cyber for Seniors yesterday, which we were lucky to hold in the COVID time, still in person, which I think is great. We certainly see them as a vulnerable group we want to educate. And just in talking with Jamila and the BDC, I think we'll be sending out, with the recording and the links, a questionnaire after this next week, and just asking you, as kind of the audience, what topics would be interesting for you going forward, as we very much see this as being something that will be a continual process.
And Brett, let me just add something in. As we do the presentation today, we do want to, actively work through your questions that you may have as we cover this content. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat. I will keep an eye on that, and I will pose questions to Brett, or indeed I will help to answer those myself. And again, we are very happy to have this relationship with the BDC. And we know that this is an area that, sometimes confounds, but all size businesses, but particularly small and medium-sized businesses. So please ask any questions that you have. And remember, this session is for you. So, all questions are beneficial. It may be something that someone else is thinking, but you've been able to put it forward. So please be as interactive as you can, and let's enjoy this hour together.
Thanks, Marisa. And we do have some questions from the BDC, initial ones, which we'll touch on as we go through as well. So, and I think it's important, whilst this is not going to be a technical deep dive, and we're going to keep it at a fairly high level, that's still important, because I work in this space. I'm a partner at Deloitte here locally, and I work in this space a lot. And what I see from breaches is it's not these super technical 0-day vulnerabilities people are exploiting. It's largely people not doing the basics right. And just by doing the things we talk about today, getting the basics right, you're going to go a long way to protecting yourselves. And I think, sometimes we think this is overly technical, but some common sense goes a long way. So just to start on a few of the most common cyber attacks, and I will say, malware, ransomware are kind of similar things. These are tools designed to either take over your systems, asking for a ransom, or to extract data from you. Quite often delivered via phishing attacks. We talked about phishing a lot, and COVID has really been an event that we've seen increase the level of phishing globally, but in Bermuda, definitely. The keys to phishing are for those bad actors to pick kind of emotive topics to hit people with emails they're not comfortable with, or times of stress. And COVID really has been that time of stress for a lot of people. And we've seen a massive uptick, around 50% globally, around phishing. And there's a couple of things associated with phishing as well. Cool names, phishing, which is voice attacks. That's where people will ring up and pretend to be from Microsoft, saying there's a problem with your system. Can we have your username and password? And that sounds silly to people. Who's going to do that? We'd be surprised. A lot of people do still. So that's something we need to be aware of. Those things, those scams continue, and in fact, they're probably more popular than they were a few years ago. Now that the technologies that are available to spoof voices and things like that as well, much more efficient way for the bad guys. And smishing, which is simply doing exactly the same by text messages, SMS. So we kind of group those together, but that's an area we've seen a big uptick in Bermuda, and we do want people to be aware of, and we'll talk about some of the things we can do around that. The other three are a little bit more technical. Man-in-the-middle attacks, that's where a bad guy would get in between yourself and somebody you're communicating with to adjust that message. Kind of technical. We don't see that many of them anymore. Denial of service attacks are just designed to slow down or to freeze your business. So that is where they throw so many messages at your system and your network that it literally freezes. The accent I have is from New Zealand. Been a while since I lived there, but originally from there. And I mentioned that because our stock exchange about 6 or 8 weeks ago in New Zealand, were contacted by some bad actors saying, well, if you don't pay X, then we'll do Y. And it's like, no, you couldn't. We've got such great systems. And they could do Y. They didn't pay the ransom. And for 3 days over a 2-week period, they shut down the stock exchange in New Zealand through a DDoS attack. So these things are real and happening today. And then SQL injection attacks, that's simply where people have some lax security controls on their websites that enable the bad guys, where you say put your password in or put your username in, to actually put a command in which will pop into your system and your database and extract data. So these are a few of the kind of the common attacks. What are the motivations of people? I think a lot in the press we hear things about nation state actors, largely Russia and China. But they are a small percentage of what we see happening globally, and actually a smaller percentage during the COVID times as well. And by far the biggest number you see there is around cybercrime. That's the motivation for 87% of the successful hacks from this website saw in May 2020. And the reason is that there's still money in it. That the tools that people use to do this are getting cheaper and cheaper to procure. If I knew how to access the dark web, I could get on there and I could order phishing as a service from people for hundreds of dollars, not tens of thousands. And they would launch fake emails for me. So the tools of the bad guys have got a lot cheaper to execute. And we're still falling for them, and they're still making money out of it. And as long as that continues, then the risk of cyber threats will continue. And we don't see this dropping anytime soon. As you're all aware, everything's more and more connected. It's our TVs, it'll be our fridges, it'll be everything, our cars. And this should worry us. The more connected we become, the more vulnerable we become. And in Bermuda, we have some vulnerabilities maybe higher than other places because they have single points of failure. If you think about critical national infrastructure around Balco, one provider, around the docks, around the hospital, or the banking sector. These are all things that concern us at a national cyber board level, and we are working, thinking about minimum standards and things like that for that. But just to be aware that in Bermuda, hundreds of years of obscurity or security through obscurity, because way out here in the middle of nowhere. But now I do feel like the island shines like a beacon, and your bad guys are definitely targeting us. And one of the things we saw, the BPS saw certainly over COVID, was a lot more activity around stealing credentials and the false use of credit cards or other people's credit cards and numbers. And that is something that the Bermuda Police Service has seen a massive uptick over COVID. So this is not theoretical. This is really real for all of us. So we talk about three streams of action, and again, I appreciate many of you will be at small or medium-sized businesses. My role, I work with like a lot of large companies that have the staff and the resources to deal with this. We appreciate that you don't won't always have that in your case. And so we talk about policy actions, technical actions, training and awareness, and it sounds like a lot, but it's just about bringing a little bit more structure to what you currently do. And one of the questions that we had initially was talking about cyber audits. Is this a thing, and what does it cost? And I think I'm involved in things like penetration testing and doing that for entities, and that's something I think that people think is for big companies and is hugely expensive. But if you're a small or medium-sized company, those services might not be more than $3,000 or $4,000 to check your perimeter and to identify those big holes that you can easily fill. Because at the end of the day, none of us are unhackable. And really, what I would tell people is I want to set that bar high enough so they go to my neighbor. I'm not really impregnable, but I want to be difficult. Just enough so people will lose interest. And I'm not worth the effort, and they go away. That's a perfect level for me for spend. And I mentioned that because a lot of things we're going to talk about just aren't expensive to implement. And I think the first thing, it's, again, we always say, your weakest link is your people, but unfortunately in the cyber world, that's just 100% the case. You can spend millions of dollars if they were available on tools, and it only takes one click to negate those. So, I think around phishing, it's got to be around training and just awareness. And I think, a lot of the things I talk about today and Marisa chips in, I take these home as well. This is not just for your small business. It's your household as well. You all know about, everybody's online, even if the kids are there, they're doing this, and man, they're really advanced. They're probably doing stuff that you might not be doing online and that. So, they need to be aware as well. But it's about awareness. It's about understanding that there are bad guys out there. If we don't, we'll talk about phishing in a second in a bit more detail, but just being aware of, not clicking on every link, being aware of, that there are bad actors. So if you don't recognize who it's coming from and you didn't expect it, then I'm not sure I'd be clicking. Encourage your staff to report suspected attacks. We'll talk about reporting a little bit as we go through. That's a known weakness, I would say. Not a criticism, Marisa, of government or anything like that, but that is a weakness we are well aware of in Bermuda, is that internally it's great, to report it to, but externally who? Certainly you could let the police know, but there's not much they can do, to be honest with you. There will be some reporting requirements coming soon, certainly under our Privacy Act. We have been lucky enough to recruit a wonderful privacy commissioner who started recently and has been on a crusade of education for the island, and that's a precursor to the launch of the Privacy Act, likely early next year. Now, so going forward, once that's in place, if we have personal information that's breached, we will certainly have a defined reporting requirement. The Bermuda Monetary Authority for the insurance sector has recently released their cyber code of conduct, which has a reporting requirement within 72 hours. But just generally, who do we report this to? Those things aren't in place. So with Marisa and team, that is something that's being actively looked at now. We're working on it, and we've been through the evaluation stages, I suppose, Marisa, and starting to look at solutions now. But we are looking at putting something in place a bit more robustly around reporting. And I don't think Cyber Tips gets enough airplay either. Marisa, if you wanted to champion that, because I think it's a great site.
The other thing to remember with phishing attacks is that most of the sources that you get them from, and you probably have received a phishing attack from the bank, one of the banks in the past, you will often notice that the banks, in trying to raise awareness and get information out, often do have a reporting address if you receive something that you're not sure about. But always remember, if you do receive a phishing email, if something looks suspicious, if they're asking for information, for you to provide your credentials to log in via email and things like that, which they would never ask for. One, you can always use the whatever email that they have provided to report a phishing email, and usually it's a matter of forwarding that email to that phishing at whatever .bm if they're using one of those emails. The other thing that you can always do if you're not sure is to call the bank or call the vendor who is asking for this really strange information, and they will often be able to tell you, no, we didn't send any emails out. So being vigilant in when you receive such messages to ensure that this doesn't seem right to me, let me check on it if it is something that you think that oh, perhaps I do need to send some information to this bank or to this vendor. There's no harm in making a quick phone call and checking.
Yeah, and I think the US Bankers Association recently launched a fantastic campaign, hashtag we wouldn't ask that. And a bank is never going to ask you to respond with a username or a password in an email. In fact, no one that you interact with should be asking you to provide those details in email. If they are, don't deal with them. And I think the voice one's a good one as well, Marisa. It's been popular in Bermuda recently. If I'm getting a voicemail from my bank saying, ring this number back, I'm checking the website and ringing the number I want to ring. Someone just leaving a voicemail for you, it's saying ring this number and then going, I'm your banker, give me your password. That's just not the way to operate either. So that's why just those little things around common sense and being cautious. And we touch on this here about review normal and expected interactions. That's just not a normal interaction. If it doesn't smell right, then I wouldn't be doing it.
The other piece, and granted, we often say this to our seniors because, and we discussed this yesterday at the Security Aware seniors, the government also will never, ask you for money or to, send information, via email, related to your, bank account information or anything like that. So again, if it is something that, just does not seem right, the best thing to do is to call that respective department or ministry to ensure. And then, of course, a politician in particular will never ask you to send them money online, in relationship to, anything that they are doing. In fact, the premier has, if you've ever seen the public awareness announcement that he has recorded for CITV, it is something that has happened, and unfortunately, generally it has been seniors that have been targeted, but it is something to be aware of.
And carrying out cybersecurity exercises, these can be on any scale. Like again, at the far end of this is war gaming, and that's for large organisations. For yourselves, we reference here around the National Cyber Centre in the UK, and at the end we do have a link or their web address, but it's easier to find. But they have some fantastic free resources. So there are some things out there where you can look yourselves to maybe do some exercises internally. But I would generally just say if it doesn't smell right, avoid it. And we can help ourselves as well. Firewalls aren't something for the rich and famous. Most of our basic tools come with firewalls, including Microsoft, come with these built in. Make sure they're turned on. Now, depending on your sophistication, there might be some things you want to do around that, but just basically turning it on is a great start. And that goes for at home as well. And one of the great things around technology, it provides lots of capabilities, and the cloud is something we've seen just explode in the last few years. And the other thing about that explosion has been the cost has dropped rapidly. So I would also, if I was you and I was looking at what my business looks like, I would consider cloud first. I think it's no longer cost prohibitive. 5-7 years ago, it wasn't cheap. I think it is now. And there were always concerns about security from a cloud perspective. I will tell you hand on heart now that I truly believe the cloud to be more secure than probably 95% on-prem the organizations we work with. And that's for the large vendors, your Amazon, your Azure, and your Google. They've invested billions of dollars in their cloud platforms, including security. And I don't think that should be a concern of yours, to be honest. And it might just be an easier way to be more secure for the same price as considering a different service. Change passwords as soon as possible. We expect a successful attack has occurred, and I'm going to say there'll be a few things we repeat here a little bit under the sections, but passwords to me is a really interesting one. I think they're very, very important at lots of different levels. I saw a webcast over COVID telling me that over 50% of households hadn't changed their router password from what came out of the box, and it doesn't surprise me. And again, that's a one minute fix. I wouldn't be surprised if we were in the island because we only have a few vendors here as well. Those Hitron things with admin, username and password. The fact that I know your username and password, it should tell you that that's the thing you should consider changing. But also at work, for a lot of years, we were told about, we had to change our password every 90 days. That was kind of the thing. Minimum 8 characters, minimum 90 days was kind of the rule of thumb for maybe 15 years, Marisa. I know it came out a while ago. Even the gentleman, and then, as the tools got more sophisticated, we kept 90 days, but we kind of added complexity. And for me, that gets really tricky for a lot of people. And the gentleman that actually came up with the rule of thumb, recently has come out himself and saying, well, no, I've changed my mind now, which he's allowed to do. It's the complexity is way more important than the frequency of change. If you make it too complex and change it too frequently, then all you're doing is encouraging people to store it somewhere they shouldn't, a yellow sticky on their desk or things like that. So, my advice would be to think about longer and more complex, much harder to breach, and changing them less frequently. Password phrases are a great one I use personally. I string 3 or 4 simple words together with some characters instead of letters. I find that really easy to remember, or easier. But try and make it easy for your staff as well. If you have some thoughts around password lockers, etc. Because the one thing that really concerns me is how many passwords we have. Netflix, Gmail, blah 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 blah. Lots and lots of things. And the more complex we make it, the more likely we are to use the same password for everything. And I'd really recommend against that. And the problem with that is that some of those services you use, like the Netflix, I see Disney Plus, the new streaming service, was hacked in the first week, usernames and passwords. Now, if they've got your username and password and using that password across every service, then you're certainly vulnerable. So I think it's something to take a step back with. And I know it can be a little frustrating, but it is really, really important. And that's probably your first line of defense. Keeping up to date with attackers, again, just think about the themes they're using. The banks are a popular one, as Marisa mentioned, but the banks aren't going to ask those questions. COVID, be really, really cautious about that. There was I mentioned at the start that there's money in it, and I'll show you how clever the bad guys are. So Italy, because Italy was just slammed. If you read the press, they were the one that the first and hit the hardest. And the bad guys there released a malicious app with a COVID theme, but they bigged it up on social media first. So they kind of let people know it was coming, so created some demand. It was an Android, not Apple-based one. And so then when it was launched, a lot of people downloaded it, and literally once it's on your phone, it give us 25 euros to unlock your phone, sort of thing. So they were patient enough to build up an expectation to use COVID as that theme when people were really sensitive about it, especially in Italy with the huge death toll they'd had. And they're good and bad, I suppose. They're good people at their job, but they're bad people. And nothing is too low for them to use as a theme. The other thing we're seeing a lot of is back on the patients is, they'll breach an organization and they'll sit and watch for a while before they launch some attacks. And so they might hit staff when they're traveling because they've had access to diaries, because we're always a little more lax on our mobiles when we're in airports, flight change or things like that. So they are super clever. Backing up your data. This might sound like a really basic thing, but you'd be surprised how often people don't do this. And this is one, again, I would encourage you to do at home as well. I've been in a situation in the past where I've lost the only version of kids' photos and things like that. Not ideal, so real things happen with this. But data is our most important asset. We're keeping it for a reason, whether it's personal or business. We need it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be keeping it. So we need to think about, what data do we need to back up, and then just do it regularly. These are very easy things to schedule. I would also, there's a couple of options here. I think I mentioned cloud before. Again, we're all familiar with it from iCloud, most of us. Although I'm not an Apple user, but my family are, so I pay the bills, so I'm familiar with iCloud, and it's not expensive. And these cloud solutions are, as I said, much more secure. I know there's been instances in the past where in the celebrity world, photos have been compromised via cloud storage. I think those vulnerabilities have largely been solved, and it is kind of secure. And I think that's, for a lot of people, would be the easiest way to back it up. If you're backing up to physical media, then do think about having it at a different location. There's no point backing up in case of a bad event like a fire if your backup sat beside your things, that's burnt at the same time. So, think about those location things. But to me, this is a really, really simple one that costs you hardly anything, that saves you from a lot of problems. You know, say you were to get ransomware tomorrow and they've frozen your whole system. Well, you know, if I've backed up last night, the worst that can happen is I've lost this morning's work. Yeah, so I can still recover that. And to me, I think so. I talked about just doing the basics, right? That's certainly one of them. And you know, we should be good at this. We are really, really good at storm season. You know, one of the members, the National Disaster Coordinator, is one of the members of our National Cyber Board, and we speak with them obviously an awful lot, and really appreciate the hard work and the great job they do around storms. And so, you know, if we're good at that sort of event, I don't think there's any reason why we shouldn't be good at, you know, the cyber thing as well. I think we just have that culture here where if we tweak it slightly, then I think we should be a lot more safer than we currently are. So, yeah, the 4 key steps to thinking about that backing up of data. Identify what you need to back up. That does become important. Storage has come down a lot, but you know, you want to think about why you're keeping certain types of data and for how long. And I say that with both a security and a privacy lens on, because once Alex has his Privacy Act in place, then you're going to have to protect all that personal information you have. So maybe for those of you that you know aren't backing up as frequently as you like, or you know want to just revisit, think about what data you're holding as well. If you hold it, you've got to secure it. It all comes at a cost, comes at a responsibility. Basic rule: don't store what you don't need. Yeah.
And then also, how long do you need to store it for?
Yep.
You know, the problem with having a lot of information, a lot of people operate under the premise that you never know what I'm going to need it for in the future. But, you know, if you look on the other side of that equation, the more information that you're collecting, if you lose that information, the greater risk you therefore have to, you know, cause problems for your customers, for yourself. So if you only need certain information to be able to do what needs to be done, that is the information that you should be collecting. If you only need that information for a year, or you know, whatever the time period that is required for that class of information, you know, most people keep financials for, you know, 7 years or whatever it may be. Whatever the time that is required that you keep that information, once that period is passed, you need to get rid of that information. Because one, you don't want to lose it, just, you know, just in case, knock on wood, there is a data breach and somebody, you know, is able to get to the hands on your customer data. But then on the other hand, as individuals through things like the Personal Information Protection Act are able to ask for their personal information from you, you know, you have to give them what you have for them to be able to make sure that the information is correct, or what have you. If you only have, you know, 3 years worth of information, because that is the retention period that you have for that class of information, then that is all the information that you have to give them. That's all the information that you need to pay to store, that you need to pay to back up. So, you know, looking at what you have, why you have it, what you need to use it for, is going to be beneficial to your organization when you are, you know, planning not just for, you know, security purposes, but also for privacy purposes.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd add to that, and I think we just need to change our way of thinking a little bit, is that, you know, kind of structured data, that data that sits within your applications, your general ledger or your client relationship database, etc. Yeah, we kind of know about that, and it's easy to manage. But at some stage, you've taken all of that stuff out into spreadsheets or Word or PowerPoint, and it's just sitting on your file servers. And you know, never forget about that stuff as well. You know, I think for most organizations, you know, I could probably recreate your general ledger based on spreadsheets you have lying around. To be honest, you know, that data is always somewhere. And think about how we operate as well, and just a bit more secure. I think, you know, I see things I would call kind of clumsy happen for people wanting to do the right thing. I think examples are where, you know, like, I got to finish that off tonight, but I got to rush home and, you know, like bath the kids and do all the right things. Like, I'll just send that file to my Gmail account, you know, and I'll work from home. Or think, you know, just some of those behaviors just aren't helpful, to be honest. And we're all trying to do the right things, and no one's trying to be malicious at all. And I think just generally being a little bit more security aware is going to make sure at least your data's not spread everywhere else, and you're vulnerable. You know, example, you know, Deloitte. So I work for Deloitte, and I think we have we have great security. It doesn't make us impregnable, but we have great security. But some of our salary data was in the public domain 3 or 4 years ago from Deloitte US, because Sony pictures were breached, and it was around the time they were making a movie taking the Mickey out of one of the careers. So we can probably guess about who did that, etc. But one of the HR people used to work for us and took that data when she moved there. And of course, Sony gets breached, our data's out there. It's amazing how kind of clumsy we've been around data and how much is out there. And now we're trying to put that genie back in the bottle, and it's not easy. So I think going forward, we just need to be a little bit more conscious about how we're treating it, because again, the more spread it out is, the harder it is to protect. Simple as that. So backing up, do it, I think was the message there. Again, the basics: install and turn on antivirus software. Every Microsoft product comes with this as well. I think but you'd be surprised how many people don't have it turned on. As I said, we're sticking with the basics here. Some of you might be like medium-sized businesses that are a bit more complicated, that could do with professionals having a look at your environment, and that's fine. But if you feel like you can't afford that at the moment, again, sticking with the basics. Yeah. So turn that virus software on, and patching is going to be the biggest issue out there. Microsoft issue free patches on a monthly schedule. Depending on what software you're using to run your business, no doubt there are regular patches coming out there, but you'd be super surprised about the number of people that just don't install them. Yeah, and this is a zero cost exercise, a little bit of time maybe. Patches are released for a reason, mainly because vulnerabilities have been identified. So there's a bit of a truism there that Microsoft use us as part of their user acceptance testing. If they had to make a product perfect before they released it, they'd never release it. So they get it pretty good. They also pay a lot for lobbying in Washington, so they can get away with this. But they chuck it out to us, and for those first 3, 6, 9 months, a lot of vulnerabilities are discovered, as people think, and that's why you see a lot of patches released. And so you've really got to just keep up to date with that. I think that's the one that probably frustrates me the most when I see people in distress because some of this is they could have avoided it, really simply.
Just to add to that, there are also a lot of security suites that are available, in addition to your, your Microsofts and things like that, your McAfee's and things like that, offer a whole package that will provide your business with, the firewall and, scanning your email addresses to make sure that passwords aren't out there. And, they may even have a VPN service tied into it so that, the information that you are sending, out to customers and things like that, people aren't able to, get a hold of that information because a secure terminal is created between, your organization and wherever you are, transferring information to and things like that. So there are a lot of other tools out there that, probably don't, only cost, maybe $100, $150 a year, that, can help to, protect a small business and, provide a lot of those services that, you wouldn't necessarily, as an individual. But then again, I'd also encourage, individuals, because we use so much, information and data and do so much online nowadays, to, seek out the expanded security packages to, secure your business, secure your home and things like that. The great thing about these I guess you can call them additional services, is that it provides you with a greater level of comfort and security. And then in dealing with your customers, you are able to better protect the information that they do provide to you. So, it may be that, you start out with the virus scanning software, but look at some of the other things that they are offering and see whether you do, wish to, turn those additional features on. I know that, just the email scanning to see if there have been, accounts that have been compromised, with, various websites and things like that. That has been really beneficial to many individuals in the last couple of months, because there have been, as Brett has said, quite a few breaches during this COVID timeframe. and you can then immediately go and change a password through a particular vendor, or create a more complex password, and use one of those password keepers that Brett mentioned earlier as well, so that you have that added level of protection when you are setting up those accounts, and being able to keep your information secure.
And I just want to add again about the single password use across platforms this time as well, Maurice, just to reinforce that. Personally, I've had Facebook, LinkedIn, and Gmail hacked. More than once with the Facebook and dummy page. I don't really use it anymore, but I don't really care. But it just shows you, if I had been using that password, across multiple platforms, including work, then I would have been exposed. And the other thing that's really helps us these days is multi-factor authentication. That just largely means something I know and something I have. So I can send a great phishing email to Marisa, and it's so clever, and she gets onto the website and she puts in her username and her password, and I've got her password. That's great. But because she's on multi-factor, I need her token or her authenticator app or things like that, and so I still can't breach. And I think we shouldn't downplay how strong or how effective multi-factor has been. I think
you've probably noticed, if you are using Facebook for your business, they have had their passwords compromised recently. So you've probably noticed that they have implemented multi-factor, and you can either have after putting in your password, they ask whether they can confirm it via a text. They'll send a code to your text message, and then you have to enter that code, or you're encouraged to use an authenticator app, and you go into that app. A 6-digit code is provided to you, and then you can go back into Facebook and type that 6-digit code. So that's because of a recent compromise to passwords. And if you have one of those password softwares, you'll see that Facebook pops up, and as Brett said, Gmail pops up as well. So it is something that I think it's something like, some of these things cost like $20, $30 a year. It's actually quite worth it, because sometimes you don't find out for quite a while that there was a compromise. You may not necessarily be looking at the news, or the way in which your news feed may be set up. Something technical like that may not pop up on your news feed for you to say, "Ooh, let me go and change my Gmail password." So it is something to that helps to keep you aware and advised as to what's going on.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it, so people feel free to Google after this call or during this call if you've got multiple screens. But there is a website out there that collates all of that data that's been hacked around email addresses. It might be interesting to find that and check your own. I wouldn't panic too much, because a lot of it's like 3-4 years old, and so you would have been aware of some of the breaches and changed passwords. But you'd be surprised just in the millions of addresses out there. So keeping your devices safe, I think this is the other thing. We are really super mobile as a society now, and I think it's great. I use my phone an awful lot, but again, just let's think about some of the basics around that. So definitely switch on password protection. I think for you Apple folks out there, it forces 6 digits now as a minimum. I think something like that. Used to be 4. But think about that being a little bit complex as well. Like 1111 might not be ideal, pretty not good for your ATM card, those sort of thing as well. So just again, common sense. Just don't make it super easy for people. Depending on the scale of your business, I think there is some value if you're certainly providing corporate devices, or that about making sure that they can be tracked and actually wiped remotely. So I'll give you an example. At Deloitte, we have a bring your own device policy. Some things on my phone. So for starters, it's partitioned into my stuff and work stuff. And that is like both the interface, but also separate. We have tools, semantic endpoint, mobile, all those sort of things. I can't even access my email without that being turned on. But even though it's my device, if I lose it, my IT guys can wipe all of that company data immediately. And I think that's kind of the world we live in a little bit. Although, don't get me wrong, iPhones in particular are quite hard to hack, not easy. Even the FBI can't do it; they have to get other people to do it for them. So, it's not super easy, but make sure that you are kind of secure around that. Keep your devices up to date. Again, I'm actually having problem accessing work email at the moment because I haven't updated my firmware on my phone, and that's good, yeah. So, make sure again the phone vendors issue updates for exactly the same reason as every other software vendor, because there's vulnerabilities. They might not have told us about them, but someone's told them or they've found them themselves. That's why they're issuing it. Now, it's not to decrease battery life and to make you buy a new phone. Trust me, although some people do think that. Keep your apps up to date as well. Applications exactly the same, and the unknown Wi-Fi hotspots, I think, is going to be a bit of a challenge for us going forward, to be honest. At the same time, we're kind of demanding free Wi-Fi everywhere. We want it to be more secure as well. So we're going to have to work at a healthy balance towards that. In Bermuda, we are seeing a lot more hotspots for Wi-Fi. I don't have a lot of control over how secure those are, which frustrates me a little bit. It'd be nice to have some sort of standard, but globally around the world, there are apps. I use an app in London, which just points me towards the free ones, so I'm not killing data all the time. Mauricio, I know you want to chop in on the hotspots here.
But the thing that you can do, again, with these security softwares that you have, many times if you do purchase it for your desktop computer, you can actually download the app for your phone. And what it will let you do is, particularly if you have a VPN component, you can actually install that VPN component onto your phone, so that when it is on an insecure network, Wi-Fi network, the VPN automatically kicks in. So I actually do have one on my phone because of, I was concerned, particularly when I was traveling and such, that, sometimes I do need to be able to, access some information that, particularly to pay for something, especially now that, when you travel, it's a matter of like, putting your phone up against something to pay for it. So I actually do use the VPN component, and that means that I'm not actually accessing my information through that Wi-Fi connection. I'm accessing my information through the VPN, and I'm just using that Wi-Fi for access. So it is something that you can use on your tablets, on your cell phones and things like that, as well as of course on your computers. The other thing with keeping your devices safe is that we also do know that so many people are using these Internet of Things devices. They are able to control things in their office. Everything from using the virtual digital assistants with your Alexas and your Siris and all sorts of things. And you're able to get your little vacuum cleaners to work, and get your weather and news and everything else just by calling out and turn on my lights and change the temperature on my air conditioner and all that type of stuff. Securing those devices is very important as well. And Brett mentioned earlier making sure that you change the passwords and things like that. But most of the time you are controlling them through your phones as well. Make sure that, again, you have secured those apps, so that whether it's your fingerprint access, your password or whatever, to be able to get into that. And then again, there are additional devices that are now being sold that you hook up to your Wi-Fi router and things like that in your homes to protect. As all of those devices go to use the internet and things like that, they actually have to go through an additional device that basically provides a firewall for you, because yes, people are hacking these devices because they're not as secure as your desktop computer, as your cell phone. So it makes our lives easier. We're using them more and more each day to do our work, but we need to make sure that those additional devices, those Internet of Things devices, are secure as well.
And that works for home as well, you know, and I think we have a duty to help our kids out. You know, we're quick to give them phones and devices, and we want to help nudge them along as well. And you know, those things Marisa talked about are kind of killing two birds with one stone. You're secure, plus you can control their time and their access, which I find really attractive, although they don't. And you know, I think the other thing, we're talking through here, and we're talking about security conscious and culture, and this is all part of just becoming more aware, because it's going to become more and more the onus on us for security. And I'll just digress for a minute and things we're hearing a lot about in Bermuda. So we know there's a potentially the government a digital bank coming, maybe. What's a digital bank going to look like? Well, those that are set up, for instance, in the US under Wyoming law and things like that, they have no bricks and mortar. Yeah, these are literally, you're controlling this through the internet or through your phone. So Marisa mentioned about payments through the phone. That's going to become the norm, not the exception. That's not going to be like that Star Trek thing. That's really how we're going to operate as a society. And we talk about blockchain a little bit. We talk about Bitcoin a lot. Yeah, and I think those digital currencies I think are attractive, for a lot of reasons. They remove friction in the system. By that, what I mean is that the costs for bank transfers and the time, seem a lot, and those digital currencies can remove that. But remember that your bank does accounting and custody for you as part of that. You probably don't think about that. That's what they do. So if I'm using Bitcoin, paid a thing, and it's stuck in my wallet, now I'm responsible for the security of my own money, and that's going to be a big challenge for a lot of people. Yeah, and it already is when we look at some of the frauds around that space. And I just mentioned that because I think it's coming, and I think it is the future. But it's going to mean security is even more important for us, and so and for everybody in our family. Yeah, so this is like not a crusade, but a little bit, because it's going to protect all of us. Yeah. Sorry, digressing for a minute. Again, a lot of stuff here I talked about before. Again, avoid using predictable passwords. Don't use password. I saw something like that the other day that a ridiculous number of people we're still using. But again, I understand why people do it. Yeah. So if we're going to make people use complex passwords, etc., think about how many they've got, making it easy for them. I just changed this last bullet point about complexity is more important than frequency this morning, and that's why I mentioned it, because I truly believe that now. I'm not sure if the 90-day thing's gone away for me. It might be 180 days, it might be 360, but the complexity is important. If I'm using 12 plus characters and it's complex, that's going to take even these tools a long time to crack at the moment. So think about that balance between how frequent and complex, and complexity is much more important. Default passwords, I mentioned that on your routers, but it'll be exactly the same within your out-of-the-box software as well. The admin password will be more than likely admin. If you are having that IT role where you're putting stuff in place, please make sure you do that. The bad guys, if they breach you, the first one password they're going to try is admin, for sure. So again, these are things that don't cost anything, and it's just about being a bit more cyber aware. So this is we've touched on this a little bit, Marisa, as we went through about being the new normal. It's not going away, and it affects everybody in society a lot. And I see the young and the elderly being some of the most vulnerable. And that's why it's fantastic that Marisa and her team do stuff in the schools. Senior Cyber Day has been going for a while, Marisa, years. It's certainly something that the National Cyber Board would love to take credit for, but we can't, because Marisa's team and Sloan and Miriam already had this in place. But I think security can't be just a network thing, and that's why I mentioned home. I think we just need to think about us being secure everywhere, and kind of looking after each other a bit as well. One of the big challenges and things that it shouldn't be is that the bad guys always seem to be a little bit of a half a step ahead of us, because they share information. They're really good at that, about sharing vulnerabilities, and we who are referred to as the good guys kind of aren't so good. And so I think we need to work together more a little bit. But having said that, there's tools out there. We talked about cloud storage for sure that help us. We didn't talk much about COVID on the call yet, but that has obviously impacted a lot. We sent people home, and so with a lot more remote connections. So that's where we Marisa mentioned VPN, and multi-factor becomes hugely important. And also just from a data security perspective, have a think about your staff and what data they have at home and their living arrangements and things like that as well. A lot of households we found in the accounting sector, people were sharing, people from other firms, we're doing calls, we have data at home and things like that. That creates some risk for us. Not that we don't trust our staff at all, that's not the case, but just the change in our working practices. And it's also, sometimes people don't take that at work security hat home. I'm a big fan of them being different environments, but when we're working from home, we need to act like we're in the office and have that same lens. And that's not always easy when I'm hovering over the email and I've got kid A screaming there and wife B quite rightly screaming there for something I haven't done. And I think it is just very, very different for us, and I think we should accept that, and we should have kind of taken time quite often to pause and just make sure everybody's comfortable at home, and they're aware that we're still dealing with sensitive data, and all those things. It just wasn't the same, and we should recognize that. Securing your Wi-Fi network, I mentioned. Again, that should definitely be done in the office, but at home as well. That's a really, really simple one for you. Best practice on payment cards, and that kind of came up a little bit. Some of you might have attended. I thought the BPS had a fantastic session probably a couple of months ago around just some of the things that they'd seen in the local community around that uptick in credit card fraud, which was certainly a lot of those credentials were obtained using computers. So it's probably good for squarely on that bucket of cybercrime. But just think about those best practices around credit cards, etc. If you're a vendor taking those, and be aware that there has been a big uptick in that sort of fraud. Your merchants that provide that will be giving you good advice and lots of stuff. Don't just pay it lip service. Digest it, implement what you can, and follow that. That's not going to go away either. There's plenty of, if people are making money, they'll continue to do it. Least access or least privilege is something that we should always consider. So, people should have the right amount of access to data and computer access to do their job, no more. The more privileged accounts we see in an organization, the broader your attack vector, the easier it is for the bad guys. It's easy if everybody has a system admin account, because it means you don't have to grant them their access. They can do everything, but it comes with a massive amount of risk. Those are the accounts that I get access to as a bad guy, enable me to largely just flow through your network and take what I want. And that's not where you want to be. So definitely think about that concept of least privilege. It's important. And limiting employee authority to install software. I get that can be a tricky one, to be honest. I find it a little tricky because people they're on their laptops so much now. The merging of home and work is really difficult for me. That's why I have my phone partitions. I can't carry two phones. It's way too complex for me. But we need to accept that, and we need to be careful about people kind of using work machines like home ones. I'm not sure we need Netflix on them and things like that, or the ability to download. So just be really careful, because there is a lot of malware out there. We mentioned about who can actually install software in your environment. And then one of the questions we had was around training on island, or around where we can get information. There's a few things there. To amuse myself, I put myself in as well, but I kind of mean that. If people do want to contact me and ask questions, we're a voluntary board for sure, and we're made up of people out there. I mentioned the National Disaster Coordinator, people from the payment services companies, from the private sector, from government, from the regulatory authority, and it's great. And everybody's volunteering. And we're doing it because it's kind of the right thing to do. And we are really happy to walk the walk. And I think any member of the National Cyber Board would be happy to take questions and to answer them. Just to as I said, it's about the high tide raising all ships. So we're really committed to that. But some real ones that are probably a bit more authoritative than Brett. The National Cybersecurity Centre in the UK, I think is an awesome website. Most of the materials on the slides today, again, which I think Marisa and I have taken credit for, but Mary M definitely needs to take credit for those. But that's the source for most of those things. So definitely check that out. It's got a lot of free materials. they've been, there's some really good things in the UK around cyber. They are really active. It's a scale thing. They've got the resource, but they've been really fantastic about, the free resources they have. They've got some fantastic things about identifying children with aptitude early, because we need to build people, which we've looked to leverage off as well. Well, that's just way too expensive, to be honest, Marisa. But for small and medium-sized businesses like yourselves, they have something called Cyber Essentials, which I definitely see as the bare minimum, to be honest. But it's certainly a good place to set the bar that isn't too expensive or onerous. And so any materials you see around Cyber Essentials, have a look at those. Think about how you can apply. That's something certainly Marisa and I have spoken about a lot. You speak with the UK about what a Bermuda version might look like. It'll look pretty similar, Marisa, I think. But again, so have a look. But I think that would be a really great starting point for us. Clearly the regulatory authority will have some rules around telecoms, and the BMA is doing a great job. There's a new cyber code for the insurance sector, and that would logically could be extended to other sectors. I think just makes sense. But then what do we do for you guys in the middle? Where's our kind of our gold standard? And I think something like Cyber Essentials, which is also a version for privacy out there as well, is kind of what we're looking at. We would like everybody to try and get to. I think it's not unfair to say Marisa and Microsoft always get to, and I big up cyber tips. We can polish it and all that stuff. So I say we, Marisa, I know it's your governments, but we can polish it, but man, there's so much great stuff on there. I don't think people appreciate around for all different ages and sectors. There's not so much on the business side, but everything we talked about common sense today is on cyber tips somewhere. So please, if you haven't visited, go and have a look.
And also, if you are on Facebook, the cybertips.bm Facebook page, during Cybersecurity Awareness Month last month, there was a lot of information that was shared that is relevant to not just individuals, but to businesses and such, including information that is beneficial to small and medium-sized businesses. So definitely like the cybertips.bm page, because a lot of information is shared to that. Also, you'll probably find, definitely you probably already like the BDC's page, like the Economic Development Department's page. They are newly formed and will be looking at, business locally in addition to internationally. So you will probably find that there will be information available from the Economic Development Department's Facebook page as well. Brett, are you ready for a question? I have a question.
Yeah, the last one I was going to highlight is just that wonderful privacy commissioner we keep mentioning about, Alex, at privacy.bm. He posted a load of stuff during Cyber Awareness Month. I would check that out as well. Easy questions only, Marisa, remember?
Yeah, and actually, Alex White, he is the Bermuda's first privacy commissioner. He has provided posted recently some guidance related to how to develop a privacy program. So that has been most recently put up on the privacy.bm website. So definitely, check that out. And undoubtedly, we will, drag Alex in for future sessions, because there is a point where you need to have your security, but you also have information that you need to keep secure, and often a lot of that information involves personal information. So there is a relationship between security and privacy, and what you are doing on your security side will benefit you as we have the rollout of the Personal Information Protection Act over the next year or so. So
he's in the pod, security and privacy. Yeah,
very much so.
Yeah,
very much so. Are you ready for a couple of questions, Brett?
Yeah, go on, fire away as long as they're easy. And so I'll answer the first one. Yes, this is for Movember, and yes, I know how bad it looks. Sorry.
Okay, so the first question is, can you confirm if Bermuda's ISPs have the technology in place to be our first line of defense against all of the issues that you've outlined? If not, why not?
Yeah, so I can't confirm 100%, but yes, they have a lot of capabilities, and some they do deploy, but they're no different to any other ISP globally. Unless government mandates, that defense role for them, then I just don't think they're going to play it, nor should they have to be honest. I think they're in a tough position. We moan about them about trying to control content and things like that, but yeah, they are definitely on the list of critical national infrastructure that we are looking at as a national cyber board to see what a minimum sort of standards would look like. 100%.
And a related question with that, I know that the from the information that was provided about the Bermuda cybersecurity strategy that was launched last September, there was discussion in the Bermuda cybersecurity strategy about cybersecurity incident response team, a CSIRT at the national level. You want to talk a little bit about what's a CSIRT and what a CSIRT would help to help for Bermuda's jurisdiction with everything that's going on, threats from around the world and things like that?
Yeah, so it's a tricky one, as Marisa knows. Actually, it's a bit of a curveball. So yeah, there's probably some strict definitions out there about cyber incident response team, and that's fine. That would obviously the keys of a name responding to incidents, but then the question would be, for whom would that be? For just those that provide critical national infrastructure, or would be the country at large? And then, do we really have the scale in Bermuda, of island of somewhere between 55 and 60,000 people to be able to have, a strict definition of here's a CERT here, here's a vulnerability center, here's a SOC thing there as well? Or does it make more sense for us to kind of broaden that remit for that CCERT to not just to respond to incidents, but to take in information around vulnerabilities, to be that place that then issues alerts to people and plays a much broader role? That is all actively being discussed, as Marisa knows. We've actually put a lot of effort in over the last 3-4 months, I'd say, Marisa. Originally, the people we were working with were going to come out, and then obviously that wasn't going to work from a travel perspective. So we had remote sessions, but we are really actively in conjunction with those in Marisa's team and other people at government looking at what that CSERT would look like. But then we can't wait for the full solution either, and that's why also we're looking at what other kind of freeware platforms we might be able to put in place as a interim measure for things like reporting vulnerabilities. I mentioned that the bad guys are great at sharing, the good guys aren't, but what do we do? How do we share at the moment? I can email my mates. And then there's also, to be honest, which I talked to Alex about, a privacy element there as well. If I report something about saying, Marisa's email at government has been breached and I'm wrong, do I have some sort of liability for doing that as well? But these are all things. The fact I know what the questions are means we are thinking about them. Yeah. So the CSERT is certainly on the horizon. Something we're looking at. What we're really just determining now is what it looks like and how broad can it be to really service Bermuda. And then, because we see other ones in other islands, Marita, Barbados is quite broad. It's way more than a CSERT. Is that the model we want to have? And then we'd obviously look at funding and what role the private sector could play as well, because I think we were talking about protecting everybody in Bermuda. So what makes sense from a costing model as well? Yeah.
We have another question here. What are your thoughts about using the same complex password for everything?
Yeah, I still think it's that is all your eggs in one basket. I'd certainly recommend against it. It depends how complex it is. There's some ones that create passwords for you, that use them all the time. So I personally think we should look to get a bit more automated. I think life would be easier if we were using tools to do this, to manage them for us, and they're not expensive. Be careful. Always be careful with free tools, I'd say. If you're not paying for a product, you probably are the product. I think there's a bit of truth in that, to be honest. So yeah, I'd be careful about that. But no, I would say yes, definitely use complex passwords. But you carry lesser risk because it's complex, but you still carry quite a bit of risk if if it was to be breached. Yeah.
Yeah. Another question here: what should I do if I do get hacked?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, the answer's on the screen. No, but so it's tricky. Um, you know, you need if you need help, you need to work out quickly where you're going to be able to get that. So I would say in Bermuda, most of the big four, the accounting firms like myself, would be a good starting point, but that depends on the scale of your business and things like that. I think we're good value for money, but we're certainly probably not the cheapest option. There's probably some other individuals out there. I'm not really. I knew some that were here that would help people that are no longer on the island and that. So I don't know if any of the small IT consultancy are providing those services. But it comes a little bit back to how big your business is as well. And I would link this to insurance a little. I think cyber insurance should be a part of any risk management framework for any entity of any scale, really, to address things like that. And as part of that, I would talk about what resources they can provide in that space. It's in their best interest for breaches to be contained because that they cost less if they are. And so you'll see a lot of cyber policies come with some of that built in as well. But yeah, depending on the magnitude, you've got to have someone you can ring. I'm not sure it's the police either. Again, I find it a really tricky one for them. So why would we be telling them? Do we want someone prosecuted? Well, finding out who's done it, that's really difficult as well. And the chances of them actually being physically located here and under our jurisdiction is really low, I think, as well. So I think it's a really tricky one about what to be fair to the police, what their role should be in all of this.
I think it partially is, and if you don't mind me helping to answer this particular question, it depends on what has been hacked. You will find that the police will be very helpful from the point of view of if it is financially related. They may not necessarily be able to, get the funds back, but they do have the ability to, work within their network and even get information out into the network. Their international law enforcement network related to, financial crime schemes that are going on at a particular time. So actually contacting the financial crime unit when there has been, a phishing attempt or something like that to, be able to, get into a bank account or try to have a payment made to, a thief or whatever it is. The police want to be able to not only receive that information to be able to try to do something about it, but they also want that information to be able to warn others and know your company's information will not be shared. That information will be kept anonymous, but that information does help other organizations who may be dealing with the same thing, but because of the fact that no one's talking about it, they do not know that they're at risk. But the other side of it is that, when you're hacked, what are the things that you have in place? And, there is some information that the Cybersecurity Governance Board may be able to provide, as we continue to develop our awareness and education programs related to how to develop an incident response plan and things like that for a smaller organization. But a lot of that preparation means knowing what you have in place, knowing what data you have, knowing how you have it secured, knowing where you have your backups, knowing how quickly you can restore your system if something happens to it and the information disappears. A great example relates to some organizations locally that may have been impacted by ransomware. Those organizations that have their information backed up regularly, that have an incident response plan in place, getting advice, whether it be from law enforcement or a board or even their IT company, in many cases is do not pay that ransomware because you're not guaranteed that you're going to have access to the data that they've locked up on that particular drive or whatever it is. But if you're backing up on a regular basis, okay, fine, it's locked up. I can go and restore that information. But then the other side to having an incident response plan and being prepared for a situation where you may be hacked is that you also need to test that plan. And that's another area that I think would probably be a good session in the future. So yes, there are things that you do have to do yourself, but in the way of a centralized location to come if you are hacked, Brett is right. It's I guess you could say, depending on the size of the organization, in some cases there are requirements. If you are registered through the BMA, not that a small or medium-sized business would be, there are requirements for reporting when the Personal Information Protection Act comes into place. If personal information has been compromised during that hack, there will be requirements to report it to the Privacy Commissioner, and an investigation will take place, and you may be required, depending on the security within your organization, to contact your clients to say that there has been a hack, and for them to keep an eye on their information, depending on the type of information that was lost. However, if your information, if you keep that information encrypted, you will still have to tell the Privacy Commissioner, but the Privacy Commissioner may say, oh, well, the information was encrypted. They're not, necessarily going to be able to, get access to that personal information that was accessed when, whatever was breached, and therefore there may not be the requirement to inform customers. So yeah, there's quite a bit that can go on with a hack.
I think Marisa, that's all spot on, but I think that there's a really key point there about if you're working out who to contact once you've been hacked, you're already in massive trouble. So I think, as Marisa's saying about incident response, if I was to say 3 key things from today is go away, look at those passwords, make sure you're doing backups, but make sure you know what to do in advance of the this happening, because there's a lot of truth in it. It's about kind of when, not if, to be honest. Sorry, Marisa, but I think it's so important.
Yeah. We have another question. Where can I get on-island training related to security?
Yeah, I think there's various people that have been doing some of this, been linking it with privacy. I know the TLC group has, for sure. There are some free things that happen as well. The local IT Audit Association, ISACA, has a number of sessions which are hugely supported by government and others, which I think are really useful as well. And I think part of this will be as well. We're not trying to classify this as formal training and things like that, but please respond to the question when we come out of upcoming topics as well. And I think the National Cyber Board will be a bit more active. It's a broad question. It depends. Are you just trying to learn enough to be a little bit more secure, or is it because I'm a member of ISACA, and ISACA has some fantastic designations around cybersecurity, right from fundamentals all the way through that I think are really good letters to have as well, things like that. So there's a wide variety, and our hope is always, as well as we're looked about what might be potential at the college going forward as well, Marisa, more strategically, and so we are trying to make sure that there is that path there for people interested to get trained to various degrees. But it's difficult at the moment.
Yeah, the other thing that's been really beneficial that we've seen in a lot of particularly during the lockdown time and everything is people have been seeking out training and such, utilizing these technologies and things like that, because of the fact that they cannot meet in person. So you may also find that there are a lot of overseas programs through various platforms that may provide you access to anything from university level courses that are at a discounted price because of the fact that they may be a recording with some information, or fully interactive classes, all the way through to certain organizations and associations offering specific series. To give an example, over the summer, the Girls in Tech Association, of which Bermuda has a chapter, offered a cybersecurity fundamentals course for females primarily, even though males were able to participate as well. It was a month-long program. It was free of charge. Trend Micro provided all of the labs. I decided to participate in it because even though I do have my cybersecurity fundamentals through ISACA, I decided, let me try this. I hadn't gotten my hands dirty related to, actually hacking and things like that since I was in college. And they did indeed have the labs where you got into a Trend Micro environment using different types of software. And at the end of it, I had to do an exam. I had a month to be able to prepare and do the exam. I could go back into the environment and review all of the, they had recorded all of the sessions that had taken place over WebEx, so I could review that information. I could review the slides. I could review the labs, and before the end of the following month, I was able to take the exam and receive the cybersecurity fundamentals certificate. So, there are a lot of things out there. I mean, even related to software systems and things like that, you'll often find that there may be certification courses related to particular software you may decide that you'd like to use for your organization, and they'll provide, the basics of the security before you actually start getting into, specialized courses on how to actually use their software to be able to, manage your processes and things like that. So there's a lot of information out there. There are a lot of courses out there. A lot of information has been put out there and accessible for free because of the fact that so many people are at home and in lockdown. So we've seen a lot of people doing a lot of training over the last couple of months that they ordinarily wouldn't have done because, ordinarily you're out and rushing about, but it's amazing when you need something to do. It's people have been actually, doing some of these courses. So, I've been rather impressed some of the things people have been telling me about.
Yeah, and LinkedIn has a learning platform now as well, which is pretty impressive as well. So I think we're almost at time, Marissa, I suspect.
Yep. I have one last question for you, if you're willing.
Go on.
The backups, pros and cons of using on-island companies for backup versus an overseas company for backups. We can have that.
I don't think there's any. Yeah, I don't think the same regulatory concerns. Again, unless you're a class 4 insurer and we're talking about taxable income in the US and stuff, which is still, operating guidelines are really important. Otherwise, the cloud, you don't know where it is. You suspect it's probably in the US, but I think I would think about cost and security. I think actually the other way around, about security and cost would be my considerations. And I don't think onshore or offshore matters, to be honest. So I would just think about what's secure, accessible, and always have a price point that's important as well. Those would be my considerations. I don't think I would have whether it's here or there. Well, having said that, there are an increasing number of cloud options locally as well. Yeah, there's an Azure stack in the Link data center now, which is no different to the Azure cloud in the US or Canada or anywhere. So those solutions. And if the pricing is comparable, just knowing, I suppose it's down the road and Link might help, but I don't think there's a reason. And there's certainly no regulatory reason, Marissa, to not have your data off island or anything like that, which was something Marissa and I were chatting about or communicating on yesterday. Yeah.
Yes, just to add to that, as Brett said, unless you are, having, tax requirements at this point in time, you will probably find that it isn't really that important. The security is probably more important. As we start getting into Bermuda and the Personal Information Protection Act, there will be more information and more guidance that will be provided by Mr. Alex White, the Privacy Commissioner, because if you are paying attention to a lot of the conversations and discussions going on internationally, particularly because of the fact that we're looking at Brexit and we're looking at everything that's going on between the US and the EU. Yes, there are some concerns with transferring personal information across borders, particularly from the EU to the US. You probably saw that there was a court case over the summer in which the privacy shield that had been set up between the EU and for US companies to be able to apply and basically meet some criteria to say that certify that they do meet these EU requirements, that it was deemed that it was invalid, and therefore there has been an awful lot of discussion over the last couple of months that EU personal data should not be transferred over to the US without certain other tools being used. And now there's been a lot of discussion over those other tools. So what we're probably going to start seeing as it relates to Bermuda and its privacy regime is that we're going to have to ensure that we are recognized by other jurisdictions that our privacy regime meets their requirements, if not exceeds their requirements. And then we are going to have to look at other jurisdictions' privacy regimes, and we have to determine which ones are adequate to our needs and things like that. So what we'll probably start seeing over the coming months and years is that between the Bermuda government and the Privacy Commissioner's Office, you will probably see certain jurisdictions. You may see that Canada is an adequate jurisdiction, so there could be free transfer of personal information between Canadian companies and Bermuda companies. But that will be once the adequacy regime is in place and we're able to say that Canada's regime is adequate, and upon applying to Canada we would do the same thing. And that is something that we're now starting to see more and more. In fact, you may have certain vendors that will have within their terms and conditions that they require you to meet the privacy requirements of their particular jurisdiction. And you probably will definitely see something like that if you're working with a company within the European Union. They will have something called GDPR, or the Global Data Protection Regulation, referred to in their terms and conditions, and requiring you to meet those requirements in doing business with them. And again, that's something that we can have a further conversation about with the privacy commissioner and such, because one of the things that was very important in the development of Bermuda's PIPA was the fact that we knew that we would have to apply for adequacy with the EU and of course with other jurisdictions as well. So PIPA has been developed with that in mind.
Okay, so just wrap up. I know we're a little bit over. Hopefully it's been useful for everybody. The last thought from me would be just that we want to keep doing these. It's the right thing to do, but we want to make them interesting for you. So when we send it out and you do have an opportunity to talk about topics or to give us feedback on what works for you, please do. We want to do these for you, not for ourselves. So we'd be really interested in that feedback. And just a big thanks from me to Marisa and team for both the slides and support and everything else they do for these events.
And thank you to the BDC for having us back. We really enjoyed doing this over the summer, and we hope to continue to partner with them to be able to offer additional topics, particularly topics that are of interest and importance to small and medium-sized organizations. This is something that is really critical to the Bermuda cybersecurity strategy, and we want to ensure that all of our businesses, but particularly our small and medium-sized businesses, are prepared to be able to operate safely and securely within this global environment.
Thank you guys both. I just want to thank you again for taking the time out to share your knowledge with us. Certainly our small and medium-sized businesses, thank you. And we look forward to having more of these sessions. I mean, it's information they need to know, and we want to make sure we get them ready. So thanks again, and we will keep you guys posted on the next dates for the remaining sessions.
That's great. Thanks, Camila. Anytime, just ask. Thank you.
All right. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Have a great weekend, everyone.